7th day from the time it was baked. And it says how. It was baked on the evening of the Sabbath, and it was eaten on the Sabbath, the 9th day. 9th day from the time it was baked. If a feast day happened to be on the eve of this Sabbath, it was eaten on the 10th day. If 2 feast days at the beginning of the year so fell, it was eaten on the 11th day. So we find that clearly this was a Sabbath day that David met the priest, and it was on the 6th day of the month. Okay, let's turn to John chapter 7. John chapter 7, verse 37. We're going to look at how Jesus healed the blind man on the Sabbath day, which was the 23rd day of the month. In John 7:37, it says, "In the last day, that great day," now that word great is megas. It's 3173, megas. It was a great day. The last day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried, saying, "If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink." And then in John 8, verse 2, it says, "And early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them." So on the last great day of the feast, it says early in the morning, the very next day, he went into the temple again, and in chapter 9, verse 1, we find that as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. Jesus spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. So here the Bible tells us that the following day after the last great day of the feast, now that's a Feast of Tabernacles, the last day, the great day of the feast, which is the 22nd day of the month, this is a day that was a annual Shabbaton, an annual Shabbat, Sabbath, and the next day, the Bible says, was the Sabbath when he healed the man. So the 22nd day was the last day of the feast. The next day was the 23rd day of the feast. Or 23rd day of the month, I'm sorry. The feast had already been over. And that day was called a Sabbath, the Sabbath day. Now, notice we saw that the word great, the last great day of the feast, that word is megas. And that word is used again in John 19, verse 31. John 19, verse 31, it says, "The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day, a megas day. They besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away." So on that particular Sabbath, that particular day, which was the 15th day of the first month, the first day of unleavened bread, was a high day, the Bible says. And the reason for that is because the weekly Sabbath coincided with the annual Sabbath, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day of unleavened bread. That's why it was a high day. Now, some have said that the last day, the great day of the feast, is actually the 21st day of the month. And the reasoning for that is in Leviticus 23, it says that there is going to be a 7-day feast. The Feast of Tabernacles is to be for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, the Bible says, would be a holy convocation, a Sabbath or a Shabbaton day, and you're to do no servile work. So some have said that the last day, the great day of the feast, is actually the 21st day of the month. But keep in mind that there's nothing about the 21st day that would make it a great day, a megas day. The word megas is used in Acts chapter 2, verse 20, speaking of the great day of the Lord when he returns. That is definitely a megas day. It says, "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood before that great megas and notable day of the Lord come." So the great day of the Lord is a megas day. It's a great day. There's nothing great about the 21st day of the 7th month. There's nothing in that day that would make it a great day. But the 8th day is a great day, for it was a Shabbaton day. So this is why it's called a great day. And think about this. If the 7th day is the last day, the great day of the feast, the 7th day of unleavened bread, why is the 8th day called the 8th day? If the 7th was the last day, the 8th day wouldn't be called the 8th day. It would be called just another day. The last day of the feast is the 8th day. This was the Magos day of that feast. Let's turn to Numbers chapter 29, verse 12, and notice what it says here. And on the 15th day of the 7th month ye shall have an holy convocation. And then it says, and on the 2nd day, verse 20, and verse 17, and then verse 20 says, and on the 3rd day, and verse 23 says, and on the 4th day, verse 26 says, and on the 5th day, and verse 29 says, and on the 6th day, and verse 32 says, and on the 7th day, and verse 35 says, and on the 8th day. So the 8th day is definitely the last day, the last great day of this feast. Let me read from Philo. Philo was also a person who lived contemporaneously with the apostles, even during the time of Christ. So he is somebody who knew what was going on at that time. Philo wrote, then Moses entered into the tabernacle, and taking his brother by the hand, and it was the 8th and last day of the festival. Notice the 8th day of the festival is called the last day of the festival. For the 7 previous days had been devoted to the initiation of the Hierophants, priests. He now initiated him and his nephews. So Philo calls the last day the 8th day. The 8th day is the last day, which would be the 22nd day of the 7th month. That is the last day, the last and great day of the feast. So the next day is the Sabbath. This proves that the 23rd day of that particular month, that year, was a weekly Sabbath. And that also proves that the 22nd could not have been a Sabbath, because it was the day right before the 23rd. That was just a Shabbaton day, an annual Sabbath. Now let's turn to Acts chapter 20, and we're going to look at Paul's travel. Acts chapter 20, verses 6 and 7. Paul says, and we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came unto them to Troas in 5 days, where we abode 7 days. Now notice when they left was after the days of unleavened bread. So that's the 22nd day of the first month. And it says, upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. And we understand the day that he was preaching till midnight was actually the first day of the week. He was departing on the morrow, the next morning, which would be also the first day of the week, because at midnight is when he was preaching. So what we find here is that he traveled on a journey for 5 days, and then he abode there 7 days, and then the next day was the first day of the week. So let's notice what it says. Look at a calendar. Compare this. Now the time when he left, in this particular calendar, I'm using the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the month as an illustration. 22nd day was the day that he left, the day after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and he went for 5 days. So counting the 22nd, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th, that's 5 days. So he arrived on the 26th, and then he abode there for 7 days. That would be the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, and also the 30th and the 1st. If there was a 30th day, it's hard to know whether there's a 30th or 29 days in that month. And then the 1st, and then the 2nd. So the 2nd day of the month was the first day of the week there. But now there's something